friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. I'm out at my trellis tunnel here, and I actually bought a tomato plant to show y'all, to have a little chat about transplanting, some transplanting etiquette, but also I want to talk about specifically how to plant tomatoes because it's different from all the other crops, at least what I grow in my garden. When I first started growing tomatoes, I planted them just like I do all of my other ones, and that is just to put it in the ground about an inch below the, inch or two below the soil. And took me a couple of years to realize that that is not what tomatoes like. So I want to talk to you about the trench method for planting tomatoes, but I also want to start out by sharing the number one thing to look out for when you are buying tomato transplants from the store. And this goes for any of your fruiting plants, peppers, eggplants, anything like that you're going to be buying from the store. Most people buy the wrong type of plant, and I want to share with you what to avoid so that you don't make that same mistake, because it will affect your yields of your plant. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to Food Prep Guide. My name is Jordan. I'm a homeschooling mom to 3, living on 3 beautiful acres with my wonderful husband. A health crisis forced our family to change the way we think about food. Unfortunately, it also put us in financial hardship. Thankfully, the solution to both challenges was the same: to live off the land as much as possible. For us, that means growing a garden, preserving the harvest, raising chickens, and cooking from scratch. It's definitely a family affair. And friends, too. Meet Stacy, researcher, author, and lifelong learner. She entered the world of food preservation in the crazy days of 2020. She joined a gleaning co-op, and a local grocer offered her clearance produce in bulk, and so the adventure began. Together, we're reclaiming the old ways of food stewardship and teaching them to the next generation. If there's one thing you should know about us, it's that we love Jesus and seek to steward his blessings wisely. Our table always has room for one more, so y'all come join us. Okay, so the number one thing that you need to know when you are buying tomatoes from the store is to not buy any that already have the tomato on them. A lot of tomato plants that you buy from the store will already be reaching the point of maturity where they are either flowering or actually the flower is already starting to turn into the fruit, and some of them you will actually see the fruit already hanging on the plant, whether it be peppers, whether it be tomatoes. And a lot of people see that and they think, wow, I can get a massive head start on my garden if I buy something that's already producing fruit. Shortcut, good deal, I'm buying it. The problem with that is you're having to transplant it from either a cell tray or a cup like this into your garden, and when you're at that stage of transplanting, you want all of the plant's energy to go into producing roots for you in your native soil or in your raised bed. You don't want it putting its energy into flowers and fruits this early on, because the more robust your root system, the more yields you're going to get, the more fruit you're going to get over the long term. You may have to wait a little bit longer for it because, you know, it's not producing the fruiting yet, but that's a good thing. You don't want to buy plants that already have fruit on them in the store. And really, if you can swing it, you don't even want to buy plants that are already flowering, because you just want to pinch those off when you get home anyway. And that's what I do, at least, because I know that bigger root systems equals bigger yields over the long term, and that's what I want, because we're canning, we're dehydrating, we're trying to grow a year's worth of food. We're not looking for just a quick snack. We are with our cherry tomatoes, but for our growing tomatoes for canning and stuff like that, we need as much of a yield as possible, and that equals bigger root system. Now, if you have a tomato plant that already does, if you can't find any that aren't already flowering, that's fine. Go for the ones that are only flowering but that don't have the fruit on it, and when you get home, just go ahead and pinch off those flowers. I know it hurts my heart to pinch off to something that's already starting to bud, but it will reward you for that action. Okay, so now that you know what type of tomato plant to buy, I want to talk about just some few transplanting etiquette. So I bought this tomato plant for a demonstration for you because my transplants were not perfect candidates for teaching transplanting tips. And for people who are brand new to gardening, or you're brand new to tomato growing, or you're brand new to expanding and growing at a level that you can produce enough to can and dehydrate and preserve throughout the year, I want to show the exact right way. Now, with that said, gardening is like everything else in life. You have one person who does it this way and one person who does it that way. And actually with gardening, it's more like 10 million people doing it 10 million different ways. And it's fine because a lot of those ways work. There is no one way to garden. But my transplants within my winter sowing, I had to restart them because some of them died and they only had one set of true leaves on them. And that's like a big deal with transplanting. You don't want to transplant your plants until they have at least 2 sets of true leaves on them. Ideally, you're going to want to wait till the plant is at least 6 inches tall and has multiple sets of true leaves on them. This year, my season came time for planting, and my tomato seedlings, a lot of them only had one set of true leaves on them, which is absolutely not ideal. And I didn't want to show you all that because I didn't want y'all to think that that was the right way to do it. Now, I am a do what you got to do to get it done girl, and so I knew that, you know, it's time to put these in the ground. They're not gonna thrive well and with how hot it's getting already so fast in those little cups that I had, and I knew I just had to get them into the ground. Now, after I show you all this, I'm going to take you over to those transplants and show you what they look like now 3 weeks later and prove to you that it's okay to plant when in less than perfect conditions. I would rather have tomato starts in the ground than not plant them because they weren't perfect to begin with. Do what you gotta do to get it done. Okay, so with that said, I got you a beautiful candidate from the store so that I could show you the right way to do this. So 2 things, actually let's do 3 things to know about transplanting. Now this is a tomato plant obviously, and the transplanting tips that I'm going to show you, the trench method I'm going to show you in just a minute, is specific to tomatoes. But these 3 etiquette tips that I'm going to talk about is for all of your transplanting. So number 1 is weather and sunshine. Now I'm going to assume in this video that you have already hardened off your plants properly. This is not a hardening off chat. So I'm going to assume that you already have hardy plants that are already able to be in the full sun today or at the time of planting. But let's talk about weather in daytime. It is sunshiny right now, but we just had a storm come through. The ground is absolutely soaked. It's fairly overcast, and right now, even though the sun is actually bearing down on me right now, it won't be for long. We have storms rolling through off and on all day today. We have a storm coming through in about an hour and a half. You can see the wind is picking up already. We have a storm coming in about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we have another one coming in the evening. Now, these aren't going to be really bad, like tornado type storms. I would not be transplanting if this was something where we are having extremely heavy winds, chance of hail, stuff like that. It's not that type of storm, but it is enough to provide some really good cloud cover so that on their first 1 to 2 days of life in the ground, they can be under some cloud cover and not getting beaten down with super hot direct sunlight. So that's number 1 tip, is to transplant on a day when you've got some cloud cover and it's not going to be so straight sun, you know, 24/7 for like the first week of life. So tip number 2 is going to be how you take the transplant out of the cup. Now, whether if you have a cup like this or you have a cell tray, a lot of them are flexible on the bottom enough to where you can push on the bottom and you can push up, and the plant will kind of start to push up out of the cup like this. You can see that I'm pushing up a little bit. It's coming up a little bit, but not a lot. So the other way you can do this is to tilt it. You're going to want to rest the main stem of the plant between your first 2 forefingers here. You don't want to grab the plant up here. You don't even want to grab the plant here. You want to just rest the stem between your fingers, turn it sideways, and just slowly start squeezing just a little bit and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle until it completely comes out. At no point do you want to grab the stem up here and pull it out that way. So I've got it out, obviously, and I've still got it rested between my 2 forefingers here. So now we move on to tip number 3, and that is talking about the root system. Now, this is one of those things that you have 2 camps on. Some people will say, never disturb the root system. And I do tend to be in that camp. I tend to be in the camp of don't mess with the roots, try to, not disturb them when you're doing the transplanting. But with cup-based transplants, which a lot of your store-bought starts are going to be in cups, they have a tendency to get root bound. Root bound is when the roots are no longer growing down and out. They are starting to circle around the cylinder of the plant start because there's nowhere else for it to go. It's gotten contained in all these walls and they're starting to have to grow this way. That's what it's called, root bound. So when it comes to tomato plants or just starts from the store that are root bound, I do disturb the roots. Now, I do recommend researching this yourself and see what you want to do because like I said, some people are like, never disturb the roots. In this case, this is when I do disturb the roots. Now, when I say disturb the roots, I'm just going to take my fingers and I'm just going to very lightly press around this soil and kind of take my fingers and do like this motion all the way around here. And what that does is it just starts the process. And also I'm being careful as I'm turning this. I'm being careful to support the stem with my 2 fingers here as I'm turning it so that this never bends down really, really bad. So supporting with these 2 fingers, and it's like, see right here, I just did like this, and you can see how this root, you know, shot up and out. So it's no longer wrapping around, it's coming out. And I just want to very gently do that a few times over the whole cup area. And that's just going to help those roots get unwound, get unbound, and go back into my native soil better. You know, I've done it both ways. I can't say 100% certain, you know, if these produce better results. I don't know. I just feel like when something is root bound like this, it could use a little bit of a head start of getting unwound. See that root right here? This root was wrapped around like this, and now it's free flowing. So I just feel like it's better. But do your research, do what you want to do, and see what is going to be work best for you. So that was the tip number 3 for etiquette, is to either, in general, don't disturb the roots. But if it's root bound, there's the tip for you to get it unbound while still not disturbing the roots too terribly bad to the point where it's going to die. Okay, now let's talk about actually transplanting the tomato plant. So tomato plants, I mentioned how they were different. And that's because everywhere that you see these little hairs, I know you've seen how fuzzy the tomato stems are, and I'm sure you probably already know this, but just in case anyone doesn't, all of those fuzzy hairs will turn into roots if they are put in contact with the soil, if they're buried. So everywhere that you bury the tomato stem and there's hairy little hairs, those are going to turn into roots. And like we said before, more roots, more yields on your tomato plants. So we don't want to just bury the plant like this, which is how I transplanted my first couple of years gardening, because I didn't grow from seed my first couple of years. I wanted to really learn how to just garden and not necessarily learn how to start seeds yet. And I would just take them out of the cup, I'd plop them in the ground, I would make the soil level even with the soil pot level, and that was just not the best way to do it. So I know better now, and I wanted to share that along and hopefully help you get a better start quicker than I did. So there are a couple things we need to do to prepare to bury this stem a lot up higher. So what I'm going to do is, you see how if I were to take off these lower limbs, you see how there's still a lot of greenery showing above here? So that's what I'm going to do. I've got 1, 2, 3 stems that are below this main stem that's already starting to kind of shoot up more outward, or excuse me, more upward than outward. So that's where I'm going to not cut the stem. That's where I'm going to trim all the branches below here. So let me do that real quick. I've just got a pair of scissors here. I'm just going to trim as close to the stem as I can get. Try to do nice clean cuts. If you have a pair of pruning shears, you could do this as well. And I'm going to prune this bottom one all the way down there at the bottom as well. The reason why we do this is because the more a tomato leaf comes in contact with the soil, the higher your risk of fungal disease. And if you're going to be burying those leaves, you're increasing your risk for fungal disease. So that's why we are trimming all of this in preparation to bury it. Now you can see how much of a stem here that I have now that I can bury. I hear some chickens. Let me make sure all my doors are shut. Yep, they're shut. Okay. We have a free-ranging flock, and if I don't shut these doors, they will come in here and destroy some stuff. So I heard some roosters, but all my doors are shut, so we're good. Okay, so we've got all of this that we can bury. There are 2 ways that we can do this. I'm going to be demonstrating the trench method today, but the other way you can do it is just to dig a really deep hole. I don't like doing that because it's a lot more labor intensive, and I generally, if I am going to do it that way, which I have in the past, I will ask my sweet husband to get his post hole diggers, and dig me a 12-inch hole with his post hole diggers. And that's kind of the ideal length that I want this tomato plant in the hole. Is going to be 12 inches deep. But I like the trench method because there's no digging involved. I don't have to wait for a time when my husband is available. I can just do this myself. Another reason why I like the trench method is because of how we're going to amend the soil. So I'm talking about it a lot. Let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm going to just very gently put this on the ground here for a minute as we get our trench prepared. So a trench, just like it sounds like, it's just a trench. I'm going to go ahead and start digging out just a row here. I'm going to try and get, ooh, that's a big old root. Let me get that out real quick. I'm going to aim for a 12-inch long trench. And then I'm going to aim for about 6 inches deep. So 12 inches long and 6 inches deep is what I'm going for. I have, you might notice some plants here. I have some green beans here because I have some tomatoes on the other side of this trellis. And green beans are nitrogen fixing crops. I sound like a broken record because I know I've mentioned that in several videos, but I never know who might be watching this video, who didn't watch a previous video, and I don't want to leave any information out that might be really important. But these green beans are nitrogen fixing plants and tomatoes are nitrogen feeding plants. So these green beans will actually keep nitrogen down into the soil, and the tomato plants can benefit from the nitrogen that is putting into the soil. It can feed from that. So green beans, anything in your legume family, is a fantastic companion for your tomatoes. So since, like I said, I had already planted out my garden. I think I just smeared dirt all over my face. I have already planted out my garden, so I went ahead and just threw some green beans here since I have tomatoes over here. So I went ahead and just ripped out the 2 green beans that I had planted here to get me about 12-inch wide trench here for this tomato, because I have a whole nother trellis of green beans. I really just did this just to benefit the tomatoes that are on the other side of this trellis. But just a tip for you, as you're planting tomatoes, you might want to plant some green beans next to them. Okay, man, there is some kind of, it's underneath this weed fabric, some kind of root. It's crazy long. It's probably like crabgrass or something, I don't know. Okay, I'm still working on this 12-inch long trench here. That's about right. Ooh, big old worm. Big juicy guy. I'll keep him there. Try not to stab him because I want him to live. Huh. Okay, so now I'm going to start going down about 6 inches. You can see my soil changing. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got my amended soil that I've been amending for years. Looks like this. And then the soil way down in there starts looking more like my native clay. So we're making progress in turning this clay into good soil, but we still have a couple years to go of amending and turning it even better. Ooh, Mr. Wormy, I don't want to kill you. Okay. Okay, that's probably about 5 inches, not quite 6 inches, but I'm going to go with that. Okay, so I wish I had brought some water over here to spray my hands off. Okay, so now we're going to amend the hole. So here's another reason why I really prefer the trench method to the hole method. Like I said, everywhere you see those hairy hairs on a tomato plant is going to produce roots. And the 2 things that I'm going to be amending the hole with are really specific to root formation, and that is mycorrhizal fungi and bone meal. Bone meal is known for helping a plant produce a very robust root system. Mycorrhizal fungi is known for having a symbiotic relationship with roots that allows it to extract more nutrients from the soil around it. So this is going to help produce roots. This is going to help the roots extract all the nutrients that are all in the soil and the nitrogen from the green beans, and it's going to help it make a better use of it. So when you're digging a hole, like a 12, let's say you do a 1 foot deep hole, our amendments are only going to go in the bottom of that hole, right? So the plant is only going to initially be extracting from the very bottom of the plant. But if I can use the trench method, then I can put the bone meal and the mycorrhizal fungi all along this whole bottom of the stem can come in contact with it. I can put mycorrhizal fungi all along here, and I feel like that is just going to give me a whole lot better results than if I were to only put it in the bottom of the hole down here. It's still going to be coming in contact with roots either way, so you know, it's certainly not a deal breaker to do the just deep hole method, but that's one of the benefits you get from the trench method. Okay, so I'm going to do about a tablespoon of this mycorrhizal fungi, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in my trench here. And then I'm not going to measure the bone meal. The bone meal, it's not going to, as long as you don't, you know, pour half the bag down the hole, it's not going to burn your plants like, you know, nitrogen could potentially. So I don't have to measure quite as much with bone meal. So I'm just sprinkling just a tad bit, maybe, I don't know, less than a quarter cup in there. Can you see that good? Yes, you can see that. Okay, so we are amended. Now at this point, I would normally get a jug of water and I would water and fill up this whole trench with water. It's called watering in your tomatoes. I don't have a jug of water right now, and we have all of those storms coming today, so I'm not as concerned about watering in this particular tomato plant. It's just one, and like I said, we have multiple rounds of storms today, so it is going to be getting drenched today, so I'm not as worried about that. But just so you know, I would generally take a milk jug of water and I would fill up this trench and do it, allow that water to start saturating this area a little bit more before I start putting in my tomato. Okay, so now we're ready to, we've amended our hole, now we're ready to actually put the tomato plant in. Now I know it sounds strange, but we're going to be laying the tomato plant sideways down into the trench. And it seems like all of these leaves would be touching the soil, which is already talked about. It's kind of a big no-no. But what we're going to do is we do have some bend in this stem, and it kind of makes me a little bit nervous every year when I do this to bend it, but every year it works out fine. So just trust the process. You don't want to, you want to go very slow, and we're going to actually hill up the soil on the side to support it so that the tomato plant actually stands upright. Okay, so let's do this process real quick. I'll put that down in there. This is a really big root ball. I'm actually going to dig up a tiny bit more right where this root ball is going to go. And I'm going to be sure to put that soil that I just put that mycorrhizal fungi right here so I can put that right on top. Okay. So I'm laying it down in the trench just like that. I'm going to put a little bit of soil underneath. And then we're going to just start putting that soil that we just took out and put it back on top. I feel like I'm kind of blocking the trench a little view. Let me try to get out of your way a little bit and maybe see a little bit better. So you can see the part that's sticking up out of the ground is now only about 6 to 7 inches tall, and you saw how big that tomato plant was. And it seems a little counterproductive to bury that much of the plant, but I'm telling you, it works wonders. So I'm going to take what's left of this dirt and try to mound up. Oh, there's my tag. I don't want to forget. I got early girl. I've never grown early girl tomatoes before. If y'all have grown early girl tomatoes, tell me what I can expect. I don't know. Flavor, yields, what can I expect with early girl tomatoes? All I know about them is that they're indeterminate. That's pretty much all I know about them. I'm going to put that tag here because I would like to see how this little experiment with this new tomato variety works out. But anyway, I'm going to take what's left of the soil that I dug out and, like I said, mound it around the side so that it props up the tomato. I'm going to do a pretty big mound because I want that tomato to stand upright. I do not want it laying down on the soil. Okay, there's our mound. I'm going to let go. And as you can see, it is standing upright all by itself. So we're good to go. I'm going to get all the rest of this soil, put it over here, right where that root ball was. And we're good to go. We've got our mound right there that is helping to support this tomato plant. All of our roots are covered, and everywhere those hairs were is going to turn into a root that's going to then come in contact with the bone meal to help it produce more and stronger roots, and the mycorrhizal fungi to help those roots extract nutrients from the soil. Okay, y'all, I hope that was helpful, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Wait a minute, don't go real quick. I forgot to show you the tomato transplant that is like proof that they can still survive even if it's not a perfect candidate. So this was one of the tomato seedlings that was really not at an ideal size to be transplanted yet. But this has been in the ground for 3 weeks, and as you can see, it is looking beautiful. I need to pull some weeds, obviously, but the leaves are just as green as they can be. And this one right here, I'm going to go ahead and pull off because it's really close to the soil line. You can see there's already some getting eaten by, oh, there's the culprit right there. Look at that. I was just about to say roly-poly, but nope. That looks like an armyworm. Okay, I might have an armyworm problem coming soon, so I need to get on that, get doing some preventive measures for that. So I just wanted to show you that it is okay to transplant plants that maybe aren't great candidates for transplanting. This only had one set of true leaves on it when I transplanted it. It was working on its second set, and as you can see, I mean, it's looking beautiful. So it is what it is. Gotta do what you gotta do, right? And it works, even if it's not ideal. Okay, y'all, for real this time. Bye. See you next time.